While we're waiting for them to get on camera, we won't be waiting long.
Rashad Miller says we will, in the captain's chair, says we will not be waiting long. And we're going to come in. There it is. Dave Shields on the left, leading 1-0 against Paulo Vitor da Rosa. Judge giving them the signal that we're on camera. They can go ahead. I'm Sheldon Menery. This is Steve Sadin. We're on GG's Live. Follow all the coverage of all the top 8 of this exciting Grand Prix Baltimore 2012.
Now, both of these players start out. They're playing blue-black control deck. They have 27 lands in their main deck, 2 additional lands each in their sideboard. So, going into this game, they're both going to have 29 lands in their deck. Not going to be missing many land drops.
So, a turn 1 and a turn 2 play from Paulo, not something you generally see a lot of out of the blue-black control deck.
Blazing out of the gates with a Nile Spellbomb and a Ratchet Bomb?
That's kind of a different blaze than Jackie Lee. When we had Dave Shields here in the booth earlier, I asked him, what are you looking forward to playing or not playing against in the top 8? He said, the first thing he said is, I really don't want to play against PB. He said it's a control matchup, but he pointed to the fact that he's one of the great players in the world. Always a tough road.
And sure enough, sits down for the top 8, playing against Paulo Vitor da Rosa.
I'm willing to bet some of the yips gone after winning that first game, though.
Should hope so.
There's a Drown Yard. So, in this mirror matchup, where's the tipping point between milling yourself for some and milling your opponent for some?
I think that you just want to start milling them from the get-go.
I mean, they have a lot of
fall behind in the value Drown Yard race. As long as you're making your land drop, you don't really need to mill yourself. You don't need to find think twices that badly.
So Dave Shields drops Drown Yard of his own and a Spellbomb.
Dave has a Ghost Quarter and an value Drown Yard. He is going to let PB Drown Yard him for 3. People keeping an eye on how many cards they have in their deck when that comes up later? Yeah. Paulo has notched his Ratchet Bomb up to 1 counter. Is he going to keep moving it up?
Doesn't look like it.
Nope, keeping it there at 1.
He certainly spent some time thinking about it.
Right now,
so Shields has to look at his mana situation before he thinks about using that Ghost Quarter.
Right, he only has 4 lands right now. And exactly how many lands you need to activate an Value Drown Yard.
He also has, you see, 2 Consecrated Sphinx and a Blue Sun Zenith in his hand. Right. So he's got some heavy duty stuff. He does have Mana Leak and Negate.
This matchup isn't always about resolving spells. Value Drown Yard is the primary victory condition in the blue-black control mirror match, and indeed in a lot of matchups for this dedicated control deck.
So Paulo does tick up the Ratchet Bomb to 2.
Because he wants to give himself Liliana protection.
And we see a Liliana in Dave Shields' hand. PV doing some quick math.
And we're getting another report from the floor. Matt Costa just evened up the score at 1 game apiece against Eric May.
Spellbomb for Paulo. No counterspell from Dave. Looks like he might have thought about that for half a second. And now Dave's going to spellbomb to himself to try to get some land.
And to think twice. Let him dig further for land. He has a lot of them in his deck, just needs to find them.
29 lands in a 60-card deck is almost half land. We see he drew one.
Oh, and another one. This is going to allow him to use his Ghost Quarter in the not-too-distant future.
I mean, obviously he's kept the Consecrated Sphinges in his deck. Is that because there wasn't enough to take out, or because he actually has a hope of resolving one at some point and getting through?
I think both. I think he also knows that Paul is going to be boarding out a lot of his removal spells. There's a good chance that if Dave resolves the Consecrated Sphinx, it's just going to win him the game. Especially, Dave brought in a couple copies of Surgical Extraction. He'll have some more advanced knowledge of what's in Paul's hands. Dave now up to 5 lands. He can Ghost Quarter, Paulo's Nephalia Drown Yard. Still have enough mana up to use his own Drown Yard. Let's see if he chooses to do that, or if he's going to wait a little while. So, Dave does use the Drown Yard, does not use the Ghost Quarter, goes untapped, but Paul stops it. And pops a Nile Spellbomb, knocking out a Think Twice and some other, and a Forbidden Alchemy from Dave's Yard. Dave drew a Bloodline Keeper. He's got quite a few creatures in his deck range. Dave can win on the Nephalia Drown Yard, but not the only way.
Again, it's part of what we talked about before, the game within the game. Knowing the guy's going to board out all his, or most of his creature removal, your creatures suddenly become extremely valuable.
And TB catches wind to the possibility that Dave might have a Bloodline Keeper, that he also wants to make sure that Liliana doesn't wreak any havoc. Bumps his Ratchet Bomb up to 3. So now, Dave plays a Liliana. Paul can knock it out immediately. Dave plays a Bloodline Keeper. Paul can add another counter, untap, take out the Bloodline Keeper.
See
another
Paolo
Drown Yard activation
with a Ghost Quarter of his own.
Players might find themselves without Drown Yards in the not too distant future. Apollo is going to cast a Snapcaster Mage. I believe this is the end of his own turn. Sees this as a good opportunity to resolve it. Gets back a Surgical Extraction that Dave had actually milled off of Paul's library with Nephalia Drown Yard.
And Dave has milled a Drown Yard into his graveyard. So he really doesn't want the Surgical Extraction to resolve.
Negate. And for Dave, Paulo responds with a Dissipate.
And Paolo still has Mana Leak mana available.
Nice. So, did we catch what Paulo targeted?
We did not. Yeah.
It was indeed the
drown yard.
drown
Yep.
yard, unsurprisingly. So now Paulo can ghost quarter the remaining drown yard and put Dave into a position where he's going to need to win with his creatures.
Well, he's got 6 mana.
Dave, but Paulo also knows exactly what's in Dave's hand. Dave doesn't seem all too happy about the current spot he's in.
So he knows his hand.
You have how many cards?
Paulo has a Tribute to Hunger and a Forbidden Alchemy.
There's a 7th land for Dave.
Paulo has no blue mana available right now. Pretty easy for Dave to resolve things. So if he wants to, he can play a Liliana and a Bloodline Keeper this turn, or he can just play the Consecrated Sphinx. However, Paulo does have a Ghost Quarter that he could use on himself if he really wants to get a blue land to mana leak. That's not what's going to happen.
Right.
Within the range of possibilities. Liliana comes down, and Dave is going to make both players discard a card. Nihil Spellbomb, sacrifice. Paulo was briefly looking at his own graveyard, seeing if he wanted to give himself some protection from surgical extraction.
Another Ghost Quarter he knows he's not going to need now.
Right.
He only has Drown Yards to take out, of course. Where's the point where Paulo does take out the Drown Yard as opposed to keeping the Ghost Quarter for mana?
He's really in no rush. However, he wants to keep his own Ghost Quarter untapped. If he taps it, then Dave Shields will be able to Ghost Quarter Paulo's Ghost Quarter, leaving Paulo without an immediate way to deal with Dave's Valley Drown Yard. So, really important for Paulo to leave that Ghost Quarter available at all times. Snapcaster Mage attacking Dave before Paulo uses a Ratchet Bomb on Free to take out the Liliana.
So we actually have damage.
Yeah. Dave now finds himself on 18.
Cards.
Paulo's life loss was all self-inflicted.
So Bloodline Keeper or Consecrated Sphinx here.
Well, Dave just threw a surgical extraction, so that might be his first action. He might go ahead and Ghost Quarter Paulo's Valley Drown Yard, hit that, get information what's in Paulo's hand. Looks like that's what he's going to do. Paulo's going to use the Drown Yard in response on Dave.
Didn't quite see what Dave milled. Maybe we can get them to move the graveyards up.
And surgical extraction on the Valley Drown Yard. PV counting his library. So make sure that he's ahead in the Drown Yard race. see if he can afford to cast Forbidden Alchemy.
So, once all drown yards are gone from this game, who's got the advantage? Got to think it's Dave with his bigger guys, unless PB's left his.
And he has. Oh, they both have Blue Sun Zenith that they can use to end the game in a hurry.
Yeah, so unless Paolo has left in his Grave Titans,
which we're going to know soon enough if he has. Given what's in both of their hands, Paolo does cast Forbidden Alchemy. See if he can find a counter. Looks like he took something blue, but I didn't get a chance to see what it is. Dissipate. Not sure about it yet.
Does he have? Yes, he does have Dissipate mana.
He's going to take it. No? Use that Bloodline Keeper too, but no, it's going to be the Dissipate. And Dissipate is going to target Surgical Extraction. Dave discarded his Mana Leak to Liliana just a turn ago, so he can't stop this from happening. He chose to instead go for the throat and a couple of his creatures. Wanted to make sure that PB didn't just win outright with Consecrated Sphinx on his own. Or
Grave Titan.
A Grave Titan in this case.
Right. There's the Bloodline Keeper.
Paolo has the Tribute to Hunger, he needs to take care of it, and he just threw a Go for the Throat that he can use to take out Dave's Consecrated Snake. But even after all that, Dave is going to have a Blue Sun Zenith that he can use to restock his hand.
Snapcaster Mage getting in there for two more. The mana efficiency of these stacks is remarkable.
They've done so much just streamline them. Ton of lands, ton of cheap threats, ton of cheap answers. Really, every card has been painstakingly chosen.
There's the Consecrated Sphinx.
PB is going to flash back a Sync twice. Cast a Go for the Throat. The end of Dave's turn.
I'm going to be dog. I'm dog.
So both. So Dave 2 cards in his hand. Paolo now 2 cards in his hand.
Just threw a Mana Leak, which could be huge. Gives him a way to counter Blue Sun Zenith should that come up. And PB plays a Grave Titan. Dave has to go for the throat that he can use to take out the Grave Titan, but even after that, Paolo's going to have 2 2/2 zombies and a Snapcaster Mage. Only going to take 2 turns to knock Dave down from 12 to 0.
So what Dave's doing right now, looking at Paolo's graveyard to see what's left in his library. I mean, he knows his deck. He's got to try to figure out what's left in Paolo's hand to see what he can go for.
Okay, good.
And what he's going to go for is game 3.
Session, yeah.
All right, tight, tension-filled, swingy back and forth. Game 2, taken down by PV.
Now, it seemed, for a while there, it seemed like the match was going to come that game was going to come down to Nepali Drown Yard. But nope, in the end, it was Creature. See, when these decks take out this many removal spells, suddenly it opens up the opportunity to win on Grave Titans, to win on Bloodline Keeper, to win on, a simple Snapcaster Mage.
It was doing the damage for a while. It got him down to 12.
Players making some more slight tweaks before game 3. We see PB looking at his batter skulls briefly.
How big is being on the plate for Dave on this match?
Deal.
Because tempo is not such a factor.
Is making land drops is more important than being able to make the first play most of the time. There's still the possibility for players to go on the beatdown with cards like Snapcaster Mage to really press their own advantage by playing a lot of Sync Slices and Forbidden Alchemies and digging through their deck, finding all the key pieces they need. As opposed to, say, the red-green aggro on white-blue humans matchup that we saw just a few minutes ago between Jackie Lee and Adam Snook, where being on the play means just so much.
Although Jackie was on the draw in game 3, right?
She did. She was able to break serve. Adam had a kind of slow draw, gave Jackie the time that she needed to take over the game with her Sword of War and Peace. Had Adam had a Champion of the Parish in his opening hand, Jackie might not have gotten that time.
Right, we're here in the quarterfinals match of Grand Prix Baltimore. Paulo Vitor Darmado Rosa versus Dave Shields. Blue Black Control mirror match. We're tied at 1 game apiece.
The top 8 is untimed, but players are still encouraged to play at a reasonable pace.
I'd say required, actually.
Required? All right.
You guys were so bad for you.
We've certainly seen slow play warnings given in top 8s of GPs and Pro Tours on camera.
I was going to draw the distraction. Yeah, that's true.
Sounds like we have a result.
We'll wait for Nate Price, our man on the floor, to give us that result.
Man on the scene. When he's reporting from over there, does Nate have the fedora with the press sticker on top of it?
Only if he took it out of Rashad's bag. And Costa took the start of the game from Eric Meng with Geist of St. Trapp. No real resistance from Meng. 1 white mana shy of casting Elish Miller. And Costa wins 2-1, advances to the semifinals. And Eric Meng is again going to need to try to find a way to qualify for Victor Addison's sword.
Both players looking at him. Shields does not like his.
And neither
so does Paulo.
So it's going down to 6.
I'll keep no blue in 3 drown yards. Tell him 4 drown yards, 3 goals.
So going to 6 for both these guys makes the keeps much more interesting. Much more significant.
Oh, certainly.
What's your leader turn 1 drown?
As players go down further and further on cards, they become more and more likely to be able to win on creatures. Suddenly, 1 player resolves key threat,
I'm really missing
Bloodline Keeper,
I couldn't figure out what they
Grave
were
Titan,
Now I know.
Straight Snakes, sticks around for a little while, they're going to win the game. Matt Costa's really been on a roll recently. 2 limited Grand Prix top 8s, in 2011. Sykes doesn't just want to be a limited expert. Spends a bunch of time, works on a constructed game, gets paid off with the top-rated first tour Dark Ascension in Honolulu, and now top 4 berth here in Baltimore.
We've seen Matt play a fair amount this weekend. He was just a good, solid player. He's not going to beat himself.
No. If you ever get a chance to listen to him talk about the game, he'll describe in vivid detail every line of play that he considered, what his opponent was considering. He'll break down what he thinks his opponent did wrong in a given game, what gave him opportunities to strike. You'll notice when people do things that are a little bit questionable, and for a lot of information from those plays.
Shields really in the tank on his keep. We see the land there in Paolo's hand.
Head literally in his hand.
No, one of the things we talked about with Brian Kibler was the how to mulligan like a pro.
Okay.
And I think it's common wisdom, and you and I talked about it yesterday a little bit. If you think you should ship it, if you think you might want to ship it, you ship it.
And Dave does indeed mulligan down to 5. Paulo keeping his 6-card hand.
You definitely don't want to be on either side of this right here. Yeah, I mean, you want to see more organic Magic games. Both, especially when you got 2 really good players, you want to see them with all their weapons coming to bear.
Well, this is a slow matchup, so Dave is going to have a lot of opportunities to draw out of it, unless Paulo goes beat down. Or Dave goes beat down. On 5 cards, he might just draw Snapcaster Mage, play it on turn 2, and ride that to victory.
All right, there's Dave's 5.
See what he can get. A couple of lands, a couple of counter spells, and a Bloodline Keeper. Not that bad. Paulo now has a Bloodline Keeper of his own.
Oh.
All right. And Dave Shields is going to be able to make at least his first 4 land drops. Twice. Dave does not dissipate it. Not the battle that he wants to be fighting right now. Paulo had a Nile Spellbomb in his hand. Chose not to cast it. He's planning to either counter spell should Dave Shields cast something of note, or just flash back King Trust. End of turn, think twice.
There's a lot of talk about card advantage in Magic. Sometimes I think players talk about it not deeply understanding what it actually is. I mean, we're in a situation here early in the game, significant card advantage to Paulo.
Right. Dave mulligan down to 5. Paulo kept his 6-card hand after mulliganing 1. On the draw, and he cast Think twice. So he's already up quite a bit.
4 cards this early in the game, 4-card difference, this delta this early in the game.
It's 3 cards.
Because he mulliganed the 6.
Right.
I mean, that delta is still a significant percentage of his hand.
Yeah. Certainly something that Dave can come back from, but it's not going to be easy.
All right, Paulo planning how he's going to run this.
again chooses not to play Niall Spellbomb. We'll note that Dave Shields found the first Nepali Drown Yard of the game. So that gives him a very real route to victory. Paulo can't find a Ghost Quarter or Drown Yard of his own. Oh, he does. Is that a Ghost Quarter in his hand? Yeah, it is. It is. So Paulo already has an answer to the Nepali Drown Yard.
Just doing a little bit of math. At the end of Dave's turn.
Dave probably hoping that Paulo doesn't draw a Ghost Quarter. Little does he know, Paulo already has it in his hand. Paulo has a Snapcaster in his Mage in his hand. He has Think Twice and Forbidden Alchemy in his deck. He doesn't mind Dave spending some time milling him. He wants to
Surgical Extraction.
Oh, that's going to be huge. So now, when Paulo does ultimately Ghost Quarter away in the Nepali Drown Yard, he's going to be able to flashback Surgical Extraction with his Snapcaster and remove all the Drown Yards from Dave's deck.
Well, we see Dave Shields sitting on 2 mana leaks.
Dave looking through Paulo's graveyard.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have 1 spot left in our banner event. See if we can 4 spots left in our standard event. If you want to get the last game to place the bet tonight, please on the side of that stage now.
Dave thinking, trying to figure out if he wants to use his Nepali Drown Yard.
You have 7 yet?
He knows that Paulo has a Ghost Quarter. He knows that the Surgical Extraction is in his graveyard and that he could be setting up for Snapcaster Mage.
Dave also thinking about...
No, does not use the Drown Yard. The correct play here.
Dave's also got to be thinking about the paths that take him down winning with that Bloodline Keeper.
Definitely not going to be easy for him to resolve it here. He knows that. He just has to be patient.
You definitely have to have a mindset to play a deck like this.
Yeah.
I'm...
Where are we?
We'll see.
I would already be chomping at the bit
Sure.
to get some action into this game.
I know I haven't had much success with dedicated control decks. It will win a lot more with more aggro control decks, or in style of Delver decks. Blue-Green Madness, close to a decade ago now. Fairies, those types of decks have always been more my cup of tea. Paulo just uses Ghost Quarter to take out Dave Shields' Nepali Drown Yard. See what the next move these players make is. Paulo's definitely looking for that opening to play Snapcaster Mage, flashing back Surgical Extraction. Has not happened quite yet.
Looks like Rashad Miller over there answering the Twitterscape mail that we're getting. Alternately, he could look over this way.
Players still deep in the tank, trying to figure out what they want to do here. Dave looking for an opportunity to resolve his Bloodline Keeper. Paulo now goes ahead and places Snapcaster Mage. Dave trying to figure out best way to deal with this. Is he going to try to dissipate it immediately? Dave has a limited amount of blue mana, so he's got to pick his spots very carefully.
He's got 3, right? All right, so there's the surgical extraction.
Getting Snapcaster Mage back. So Dave just allowed the Snapcaster Mage to resolve, choosing to instead fight over the surgical extraction. Does not want that surgical extraction in Paul's graveyard.
Follow with a dissipate, but sitting on a mana leak, I think.
Only 1 land left over. Dave is going to be able to mana leak back. So keeps the Drown Yards around, but Dave is now tapped out. Gives Paulo an opportunity to stick a Bloodline Keeper.
Still have mana leak, mana up.
Paulo just found a Nephalia Drown Yard, but that's not going to be a great way to win, seeing as Dave already has 2 Ghost Quarters on the board.
But Dave only on 6 mana, so he can't really afford to sacrifice too many Ghost Quarters.
No. He's going to need to figure out something to do about Paulo's Bloodline Keeper. Dave has a Bloodline Keeper of his own.
But he doesn't have a 7th mana to fight through mana leak.
But he does have his own mana leak, so he could counter back. He is going to cast the Bloodline Keeper. Paulo will mana leak, and Dave will mana leak back.
They have 3 cards left.
Paulo's going to look for a way to deal with Dave's Bloodline Keeper. Starts off by casting the Sink twice.
We have about 7 more minutes to sign for the standard box. We have currently 3 slots left.
Looking around, thinking about flashing back Sink twice right now to find a go through the throat. There's a Ratchet Bomb in Paulo's hand, so he's not going to cast anything, just passes the turn over. And Dave just threw a Go for the Throat of his own, so he's going to be able to take out that Bloodline Keeper. Dave thinks for a little bit, passes the turn over to Paulo. At the end of the turn, Paulo is going to flash back Think twice. Dave's going to respond with Go for the Throat.
To which Paulo will respond to make 1 vampire.
He does. Makes a vampire. And the Bloodline Keeper is down. Now, Paulo got to find a way to deal with Dave's Bloodline Keeper fairly quickly, or he's just going to die to it. Paulo sacrifices now Spellbomb to knock out Dave Shields' graveyard. Makes the Snapcaster Mage that's in Dave's hand a lot weaker. And Paulo's gonna untap. Paul has a Dissipate and a Snapcaster Mage in his hand. Dave thought about casting Forbidden Alchemy. Did not do it. Hoping with some Bloodline Keeper.
That's a little dangerous there.
I think he would have been better off using the Bloodline Keeper first, and that way he'll be able to survive past Tribute to Hunger. So he can play a Snapcaster Mage in response easily.
Not a big fan of using sleeves of the color of your deck as tokens.
A little bit confusing. I'll cast a Snapcaster Mage at the end of Dave's turn. Looks like he's pointing at his Blue Sun Zenith. Now, what happens if you flash back a Blue Sun Zenith?
Shuffles it back into your library. When we're casting something with alternate casting cost, X is 0.
The targeting of Blue Sun with the Snapcaster ability. Okay.
So the interaction with Blue Sun Zenith is not good.
Well,
And Snapcaster Mage. You can play it through.
Snapcaster Mage gives it flashback of. Oh, okay.
So
Sorry.
he can play it for X, and even though it would normally get exiled, it would then shuffle back.
It gets exiled.
It does get exiled.
Right, because a self-replacement applies first, and flashback is a self-replacement.
So Paulo finds himself with a handful of cards, but still needs an answer for that Bloodline Keeper.
Doesn't look like he drew one either. Dave Shields can live on the Bloodline Keepers here.
Okay. Paulo has a Ratchet Bomb, might be able to buy him a little bit of time. But until Paulo finds a way to actually kill Bloodline Keeper, it's Dave's match to lose. And Dave just found a Natalia Drowned Yard. Gives him another route to victory.
So it looks like this match starting to tilt in the favor of Dave Shields.
Certainly seems that way. It's up to Paulo. Paulo can find an answer, then he'll find himself in the lead. But until that point, gotta give it to Dave.
I think there's, when we were looking at Dave, remember Dave Mulligan a 5 in this game.
Did. Paulo on the play, and Paulo had a sync twice, so pull himself even further ahead during the early turn.
Paulo did Mulligan to 6. Liliana is going to get met with Dissipate.
Dave does not fight over that. Doesn't have anything to fight with. Paulo wisely uses the Natalia Drowned Yard on himself. Finds a sync twice, which he casts. Paulo just found another Natalia Drowned Yard. And a Go for the Throat. Freddy's Go for the Throat on Bloodline Keeper.
It doesn't look like Matt's got anything in his graveyard to get back with
Not currently. Paulo was able to use a Nile Spellbomb a couple of turns ago to wipe that out. Does have a Sink twice that he can use to hopefully draw his one negate.
Looks like he's going to choose to not try to fight over that.
Just makes a token. And this is going to open up an opportunity for people to play Ratchet Bomb. Can't imagine Dave fighting over that either. He does not. Ratchet Bomb clears off all the tokens.
There's
Paulo attack for 4.
some value to him playing a Snapcaster for some trades here or not?
Not sure. It seems like he wants to play around Mana Leak a little bit, and he wants to get more value out of his cards. Dave knows that he can afford to take a couple of hits, and he takes one right here. Goes to 14.
Slight momentum swing back the other way.
Oh, I'd certainly say so. Paulo was just digging through his deck as quickly as possible, trying to find that answer to Dave's Bloodline Keeper. He did find it in the form of Go for the Throat, and he now finds himself very much in the lead. Dave to go back to using the Value Drown Yards on Paulo, hoping to win by decking. Can we get a library time?
Want to say hey to our 6,000th viewer that we've just crossed the line here on GG's Live. A lot of you out there watching the event. Hope you're having a good time. We, Steve and I certainly are. I know Two Soups Miller over there in the command chair certainly is.
In response to Nile Spellbomb, Paulo flashback a Think Twice. Doesn't want to see all of his flashback cards get whisked away.
Paulo doing a graveyard library count. We'll get the exact numbers on those reported from our crack staff.
Paulo using a Nephalia Drown Yard on Dave. Each time Paulo uses that Drown Yard on Dave, it gives Dave the potential to hit a relevant spell that he can flash back with Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah.
Paulo gets into the red zone again with the Snapcaster Mages. Now we're going to see Dave.
So, Nate Price, our man on the floor, just gave us a approximate library count. He says that David Shields is around 35 cards, and PB has about 20. Approximate.
So there's a significant advantage for Shields right here in the graveyard count.
If he has the time to, he'll be able to deck Paulo in the next 4 or 5 turns. Forbidden Alchemy certainly helps that cause. So it looks like it just found Paulo a Ghost Quarter, which he can use to take out the Drown Yard.
Shields seeing the number of cards in Paulo's library, now thinking that he just wants to survive these attacks.
Snapcaster Mages are going to trade, and Dave Shields will fall down to 12. So Paulo appears to have did find the Ghost Quarter. He can pick out Dave's Value Drown Yard. going to have to find a different route to victory.
He's already got a drown yard in the graveyard. See if he's got a...
Oh, he's got another one
in exile.
Exile. So he has one Nepali drown yard left in his library. Dave does have 2 ghost quarters of his own that he needs to take out Apollo's Nepali drown yard. He is in.
What was the other card? He flicked past it. He's got a Snapcaster
and a Think Twice.
And a Think Twice. $15 cards for Paolo.
Okay.
We counted along with Dave Shields.
Dave goes ahead and mills Paulo once again. Leaves Paulo with 12 cards in his library and prompts Paulo to use a Ghost Quarter on Dave's Nepali drown yard.
So we got what we had hoped for. Another tight, tense match. Momentum swings. Outcome still significantly in doubt.
Now, start of the third game, Dave Shields mulliganed down to 5 on the play. Worried that he might just get blown out quickly, but no. Things slowed down a bit. Dave was able to draw out of that tough spot, and now finds himself in the midst of a very close game. Dave draws a Consecrated Sphinx. If unanswered, Consecrated Sphinx will win the game in a matter of turns.
He only has 8 mana, so he's not safe from mana leak at the moment.
Yeah. Apollo has quite a few cards in his hand. Not that much action. He does have mana leak. He has to think twice. He's got a bunch of lands.
There's a surgical extraction, which can take a few cards out of, he might be, Dave Shields might think about casting surgical extraction just to get some cards out of PB's library, even if they're not significant.
Well, actually, he's going to get something very significant. He just used a Ghost Quarter, taking out Nepali drown yard, and he's going to play his Snapcaster Mage, flashing back the surgical extraction to remove the rest of the drown yards from Paulo's deck and Paulo's hand. So Paulo had a Nepali drown yard in his hand, could have played it last turn, but didn't want to tip his hand to Dave Shields. Might turn out to be a costly play. Oh, I'm sorry. He played the Ghost Quarter, which he actually absolutely had to do. That was my mistake.
Yeah. So there's the Snapcaster. Targets surgical extraction.
And Paulo has a mana leak. Not going to do much against Dave's 5 untapped lands.
The other significant thing here, of course, for Dave
to pay the mana for it.
Is gives him the Snapcaster to block Paulo's.
Yeah. Paulo only has a mana leak in his hand at this point.
Dave Shields makes a sort of a production about taking the drown yard out of Paulo's hand. It's a significant card.
And
advantage.
Dave now gets to go through Paulo's deck, see exactly what he has to work with. There isn't a victory condition.
He has, Paulo can't win this game.
He has a Tribute to Hunger that can take out that Snapcaster Mage. A couple counters. That's it. Soon as Dave deals with Paulo's Snapcaster Mage, he has the match. Yeah, Dave double checking, making sure that he knows exactly what the score is.
This is deep magic.
Yeah. Paulo has 9 cards left. He needs to get in 6 hits with his Snapcaster Mage, or he's out of the tournament.
Was there a way to deal with
There's
Dave's
a tribute to hunger left in his deck. Not only is that going to have to be in the first couple of cards, it's going to have to resolve. TV counting things out. See what it needs to do to win the game.
You know, there was a time when a player of PV's caliber wouldn't be caught dead being seen to do the math. You know, there's the gesturing, the counting on the fingers. The old guard guys just wouldn't do it.
TV passes the turn back to Dave.
It will truly be pulling a rabbit out of the hat if PV can manage to win this game.
He needs to find his tribute to the hunger in the next couple of cards, and he needs it to resolve, and he needs to have Dave not draw anything else of note.
Dave Shields has drawn Consecrated Sphinx.
Now Spellbomb will knock out Paulo's graveyard. Paulo looking through his sideboard quickly.
So resolving the Consecrated Sphinx also basically win condition for Dave because it makes the Tribute to Hunger irrelevant.
Correct. And
the battling Snapcaster Mage irrelevant.
Dave knows that Paulo has Mana Leak in his hand. Isn't going to walk into that right now. But he's got plenty of time to dig through his deck, find another answer, find another creature, find a removal spell, or just find some more land so he can get his Consecrated Sphinx in past Mana Leak. So he found a Liliana in the Veil, which, should that resolve, that would win him the match as well. Now, Spellbomb.
Matt Costa and Matt Scott are already underway in their semifinal match, Delver versus Zombies, and Matt Costa has taken game one off of Matt Scott's Zombie Horde. No answer for Paolo. Now I think we're just seeing the clock tick.
It's just a matter of time now. Dave drew another Mana Lake. Not all that, and he drew a Surgical Extraction.
Although Paulo has no graveyard.
Right. Had he not removed Paulo's graveyard, then that Surgical Extraction would have allowed him to lock up the game even sooner.
There's the Liliana.
Veil, resolve. Gonna take out Paulo's Snapcaster Mage, and that's the match. There's nothing Paulo can do to win this game. Paulo knows it and concedes.
Extends the hand. That's exciting, deep, strategic, powerful magic that you just watched.
There's so many points in that game. Dave just seemed like he was so far behind. Started off with a mulligan to 5. Found himself without a board, staring down 2 Snapcaster Mages in a grip full of cards. Persevered. Got to a point where he was able to literally deal with every threat in Paulo's deck. Literally every threat. Oh, now he's getting a nice victory massage from his friend.
I think that's
well deserved.
Ben Friedman.
All right, so the top 4 is set. Dave Shields will be playing against Jackie Lee. Dave Shields, blue-black control. We just saw him beat Paul Vitor Damadurosa. Jackie Lee playing red-green aggro. Other side of the bracket, we have Matt Costa playing blue-white Delver against